Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. I'm happy to be back. A few days off from the season ending and getting all the end of season videos out. It's time to turn our focus elsewhere. We're going to have a big summer, of course, with Scotland being at the Euros, and there will be content around the Euros and Scotland specifically. Don't worry about that, but we also get to look forward a bit to next season. This is meant to be a big week for Celtic. We're expecting the Eddie Howe announcement sometime soon, but we've got other things to worry about, and that's the players we're going to recruit. So, what's the ideal Celtic starting 11 for next season? Well, I've done a little bit of scouting, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't call it that. I've done a little bit of research, and I've put together what I feel would be an ideal 11 for Celtic to start the season with, heading into the new campaign. Right, to clarify, and before we go any further, I am dubbing this an ideal Celtic 11 for next season. I'm not saying it's going to be the Celtic 11 next season. I'm not saying realistically it's going to be the Celtic 11 next season. Some of the players who I have included in this team are players that Celtic are probably not even looking at, or probably would never look at, for various reasons, out of the scouting range, out of the market range in terms of money. You know, there's a lot of issues that comes to signing players that none of us will ever know the ins and outs of, because we ultimately don't work in that sector in football. So we can only dream and we can only suggest things, and that's exactly what I am doing in this video. So before you start typing away saying we'll never get him, we'll never do this, blah blah blah, keep in mind it's ideal, and it's also holding on to the faintest of hopes, you could say, that we can keep some of our key players. And before we go any further with the video, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, and more importantly, before we go any further, press the like button. Right, I'm not going to set a target, but if you want a video tomorrow, press the like button. That's it, right now, go down there, down, like, and if you're new, subscribe. Let's have a look through what I think's an ideal 11 for Celtic. Right, the graphic on screen is currently got, what is that, 5, 6 players, I think that's there, 2, 4, 6, yeah, 6 players. And these are 6 players that I would ideally like to keep at the club this season and have in our starting lineup next year. Now, let's address the big ones straight away. Christopher Ajer and Odsonne Edouard. Realistically, they're not going to be at the club next season. Right now, though, transfer talk has kind of quietened itself. We've not heard a lot about teams wanting to come in for Edouard and Ajer. Not as much as there was, you know, even 6 months to a year ago, where Ajer was getting linked with AC Milan, Edouard was getting linked with Leicester, Arsenal, all these clubs. It has kind of quietened itself down, which I'm very happy about. But it means Celtic need to hurry up and get new deals out for these players. Maybe that will come when Eddie Howe is here. There is always that sliver of hope that he can convince these guys to stay at the club. He can give them a vision, he can give them a plan of action about where this club will be heading over the next few years under his management. Now, realistically, is it going to happen? I don't think so. I think we'll have to reimagine this team that I'll have by the end of the video with replacements for Edouard and Christopher Ajer. Also, I think the majority of our signings this season, or the upcoming season I should say, will be relying on the sale of Edouard and Ajer. You know, we're hoping to get, you know, £30 million we're talking here for these two players. Whether we get that or not, whatever the fee is that we get for the two of them combined is going to probably make up the majority of our transfer budget. So it is important that we look at every option that is on the table regarding these two players. If it was up to me and I was Eddie Howe, I would be doing my best to keep them, because I think they're two of the best players at the club, if not the two best players at the club, and the two most important players at the club. And it keeps a sense of continuity as well. You want to have as many good players from the previous spells as possible, players that haven't kind of withered away down to nothing and are dead wood. We need the important ones, and the ones that understand what it's like to win. Edouard has been top scorer in this league, you know, the last couple of years. He's been brilliant. And to lose a player of his quality is going to be so hard to replace. So I'd like to maybe make that a bit easier. And Ajer, you know, we've had defensive issues for a while, but Ajer's always been the one that we've raved about. So I'd like to keep him. Realistically, is it going to happen? I don't think so. But I'm going to keep them there. Turnbull, Callum McGregor and Soro, they speak for themselves. Turnbull is the guy who we should really be building the team around, especially if Edouard does leave. Turnbull, we've got to prioritise his development, and we've got to prioritise the quality of him and how that'll work around other players. So Turnbull for me, of course, is there. McGregor is pretty much going to be the captain of this club, but we'll talk about that a bit more when we come to a specific player. You've got to keep McGregor. He's been here for so long and he's always been consistent. This year, dipped a little bit, but the rest of the team did as well. He can't carry that himself. Soro, I think, is good enough to move into that starting lineup. We've seen glimpses of that around November and December time, and I wish we got more of that. I wish that John Kennedy had the faith to play him this year when he got the job. He didn't, but I still believe he has got the quality to be Maybe not starting every week initially, if he shows he's good enough for that, yeah, but he can definitely dip in and out of the team along with other centre mids that we could either sign or we have at the club. The big one is Barkas. A lot of people don't like him. I think he is the holy one. I'm joking, right? That's too far. That's too far. He's not at Boric yet, but I believe we will get the best out of him eventually. If we don't, we don't, and I'll be proven wrong. But I like him. And I think I'm glad that we got to see a couple of games at the end of the season with him. It's all about getting him confident, getting him into this team with, a sense of belonging, I think. The guy's struggled. He's came over to a country where he doesn't know anyone, doesn't speak really much of the language, and the toughest time he ever could. None of his family was really here, I think. He was in a situation where at the start of the season there was 2 separate changing rooms. You can't really expect him to fit in comfortably in those circumstances, and I feel like the treatment he's been getting is harsh. I like him and everybody knows that. I think he should get another chance. I'm not saying we should be negligent about it and not sign another keeper, but I do believe Barkas at £6 million deserves his chance once again to prove himself as the first team keeper at Celtic, because he is a good goalkeeper. And opposition fans will try to tell you he's not because of what they've seen, but you only have to go as far back, and you don't need to be ignorant about it. Go back and look at him before he joined Celtic, when the guy was playing in the Champions League doing well. Even when he played against Celtic, he'd done really well. And in the Greek Super League as well, he was doing well. So, there is a sense of ignorance around it, I think, that people don't want to admit that he's had a good career up until now. And I think he can still turn it around. Once again, though, stress this once more, we do need to look at other keepers. So this is where it gets interesting. This is where people are going to moan. You're not going to be able to sign him. There's absolutely no chance. He's not coming to Celtic. Well, we'll certainly have a look at these players anyway. Let's go. Let's jump right into the first ones, and those are the centre-backs. First is Steve Cook, and I think this is one that might divide opinion. But Eddie Howe has, of course, worked with Steve Cook for a long time at Bournemouth, and I'm not saying we should just go out and sign every single Bournemouth player there is, but he's someone who... yeah, it can kind of go both ways. Would it be the Shane Duffy effect? I would like to hope not. I'd like to think that Steve Cook is going to work and fit a system that Eddie Howe will make familiar. And you'll note, and I'll speak about my system towards the end of the video. People will be like, wait, hold on, you're not going 4-2-3-1. What are you doing? We'll talk about that at the end. Steve Cook is captain Bournemouth for a long while. He's a kind of leader that you need in the changing room. I think with Scott Brown departing the club, and with a lot of the younger guys coming through as well, they need players like that. Steve Cook is someone who in this system would probably start the majority of the time, but if you're playing a flat back 4, he doesn't need to start all the time if he hasn't got it in him. He is getting on a little bit, 30 years old. Eddie Howe is someone who would be delighted to work with, and he's still got quality there, part of a Bournemouth team who charged for promotion this year. And look, he's a player that's still got fine quality. Now, don't want to rant and rave because I've done that about Duffy and it could end up the same way, but it's certainly a solid option and a leader that we kind of need. Even if they don't play a lot, we do need leaders in that changing room. You can't undermine the influence of guys that have the experience and have led clubs before. Turns out Steve Cook is actually out of contract this summer after making 47 appearances in all competitions this season. Celtic could pick him up in a free. I feel like, there's not much to lose there. The other centre-half I have alongside Ayer in a back 3 here is Mario Vuskovic, the Croatian centre-half who has been linked with Celtic already this window. Playing for Hajduk Split this season, I like the look of him since he was kind of raised into the question of being one of Celtic's signings. Apparently we're being told we'll have to pay a fee of €6 million, around £5 million, isn't it, if we want to bring him in. Now, there's nothing concrete to suggest this is going to happen, but he does look like a really good player at a young age. 19 years old, he's a player who certainly has a lot of room for development. And he's done really well this season. I think he's played 38 times, around that number anyway. 2 goals, 2 assists from the back, and as well being a strong enough defender. Someone who we could easily profit off in the future. He has been looked at by the likes of Napoli and Torino over in Serie A, which means it won't be easy to pick up a player like him. There will be competition, but certainly an option Celtic should look at. Now, people might be thinking, where's Jullien? Surely Jullien comes back into this starting 11. The reason I haven't got Jullien in the 11 just now is because there is no real clarification of when he'll be back. He is out with a bad injury. Will he be ready for the start of the season? We still don't really know yet. There is a lingering sort of doubt over that. So I would have Jullien in here probably. I'd probably have him in over Steve Cook. But Mario Vuskovic, young guy that looks like has a lot of potential and is delivering right now at the young age of 19. Here's the first player that I brought up in a video that I made a couple of weeks ago. I done a 4 players Celtic should sign this season, and it's Danny Da Costa, who is currently about to return to his parent club of Eintracht Frankfurt over in Germany after a loan spell at FC Mainz, which he done really well in. Now, apparently the German side want to bring him back. this summer. They want to sign him permanently after kind of rejuvenating his career there. But the talk initially was a fee as low as kind of £3 to £4 million, something Celtic certainly could probably have a look at. Now, once again, one of these players I don't expect Celtic to be anywhere near. I think he'll be very content in Germany as well. I mean, you're playing in the best division in the world, pretty much, the Bundesliga, one of, if not the best division in the world. It's very unlikely you're going to switch to Celtic. But look, we're talking about a guy who's comfortable in the right midfield and a guy that's comfortable at the right wing back too, and also just the normal right back. So he's very, very versatile down that right hand side, and that would solve a lot of problems for Celtic. A player who can do all of that, attack and defend on that right hand side. A guy that's at a decent age as well, 25, 26 years old, still very much in his prime. The question is, will he want to go back to Mainz? Will he want to play there and try and progress his career in the Bundesliga once more? We do have that European football advantage over here, and the fact we're appointing a name like Eddie Howe, it certainly won't be easy though. I should really say it wouldn't be easy, because he's not a name that's going to be at Celtic. He's just someone I like and I would have in here if I was a scout or manager. Josh Doig, a guy who was also in that video, is the player I have on the left hand side, because he's very resemblant to me of that kind of Kieran Tierney style, where he is good going forward, and he's very raw at the moment, no denying that. But there's certainly room for progression, the same way in which happened with Kieran Tierney. Now, that's not me saying he's going to come into Celtic and be the next Kieran Tierney, be as good as Kieran Tierney. But I certainly think there are some similarities there, and he could be of use to Celtic. And I feel like he's already a quality enough player to get into the starting 11 and begin that progression at the highest level. We've obviously got Greg Taylor there as well, and both of them have a kind of interesting position in where they could fight for that first team spot. Josh Doig, yeah, a lot of people were talking about in the cup final how Sean Rooney sort of bullied him, and that's going to happen when you're that young, and you've got a player like Rooney who's physically bigger and better than you. But as I said, room for development, a better club. I feel like he could come on leaps and bounds at Celtic, and I really want to see him here. I feel like he's a must sign for Celtic. I've said it before and I'll say it again, I would love to have him. And the final player in this team is someone you've probably not heard much of, and I never really heard much of until I seen him mentioned on Twitter. It's Mohamed Bayo of Clermont Foot of the French Ligue 2. A guy who's had a really good season. And massive shout out by the way to Boys Analytics over on Twitter. If you haven't already followed their page, please make sure to do so. One of the best pages on Twitter. I love it as one of those guys who are more and more getting into the football hipster way of things. I certainly love looking at his page. It's a name that was brought up by him and was suggested, in fact, for this video by Boys Analytics. So thank you to them. Shout out to them. Go and give them a follow. Look, Mohamed Bayo is a guy who, yeah, we wouldn't know much about, and I never knew much about, but when you look into it, and I looked into him over the past couple of weeks, he looks as though he has bags of potential. 38 appearances this season in the league, and scoring 22 goals, assisting 7. That suggests to me is a guy who not only can score goals, but can create goals. If we lose Edouard, this is the kind of player you need. And him and Edouard, I feel like could be a lethal combination. Now, is it going to happen? No, probably not. Once again, one of those names that I believe is a guy you suggest, but Celtic aren't looking at. They'll be looking at Kevin Nisbets, they'll be looking at maybe Josh Kings and stuff. I would like this very much. I feel like he's got all the makings of a player who could be just as good as Edouard up front one day. It's hard to get to that level, but if you look at all the names out there on paper, this guy jumps out to me as being that one guy that could do that. Because of the stats and the clips and stuff I've seen of him. Yeah, I like him. Scoring goals, what else can you ask for? He's a striker, and probably a striker you could pick up for a relatively cheap fee being in League 2. I think his transfer market value on the site Transfermarkt is saying 2.7 million. Probably a bit more than that you'd imagine they'd want, but someone that's not going to be extortionate for Celtic, certainly not a Jordan Larson. And that's it. That's my 11. Now you'll notice that I've went for a 5-3-2 sort of formation here. If you want to look at it as a 3-5-2, that's what I've gone for. And people will be saying, is that not kind of contradict everything you've said throughout the season about Celtic lacking the width and the attacking wide players? Well, yes, it does, but I think with a manager like Eddie Howe, you're going to get a far more successful working 3-5-2, and with these players, Doig and Da Costa, who I've got on the right hand side especially, they are good going forward, they're good going back. Especially with Doig, there's going to be a lot more room for development, but Da Costa's already established that part of his game, and he done really well at filling in that right wing back role, for FC Mainz, where he can bring that to Celtic and bring it in a successful manner. Doig not so sure about yet, as he's only been in the first team for a year, but it's certainly an option, and there's still other left backs you can sign out there anyway. The thing is with this 11, I think it's very adaptable to make it into a sort of 4-4-2, which Eddie Howe played a lot of at Bournemouth. That means we need to sign a left winger as well, and you'll notice there's no left winger on this page. We do need to still sign one, absolutely, definitely. But as soon as you get a left winger involved there, this is very adaptable into a 4-4-2, along with other players we already have at the club. So I think it's quite an adaptable formation into different scenarios and different setups. And also it's one that I think Eddie Howe has shown before and used before in the Premier League that he can make work successfully. It's not as if I'm saying he should start using it for the first time in his career. Eddie Howe's used these sort of 5-3-2s and 3-5-2s before, and it's worked really well. It's not going to be like Neil Lennon's attempt at it. At one point, Neil Lennon's attempt at it was actually really good, to be fair to him, but it slipped. Eddie Howe got a better understanding, I think, of these kind of modern setups in the game. And just out of, this is a video for another day if you're talking about complete depth, but I did go to the effort to put together a graphic here which shows the team with more depth and who the other options would be. All the players, of course, in yellow are players we already have. Whites are the players that we should be signing. King and Nisbet are two options I've given up top as well. Of course, we've been linked with Nisbet. Josh King will be available in a free transfer and worked with Eddie Howe before. The same with Adam Smith as well, who's in that boat and a very good right back. I feel he could come in and he'd be really good in a flat back 4-2. So Smith is there too. The other two whites there, Ferguson and Marciano. I'd bring them in if we could. Marciano going on a free transfer as well. For a backup keeper, I wouldn't turn them back. He was brilliant for Hibs. And Ferguson, I've already spoke about before on the channel. I'd love to have him at Celtic. And then all the yellow names there, of course, all the yellows are players who we already have at the club who should be in with a shout of starting at points for Celtic next year, and also just being used for depth. Some younger, some older. Rogic might not be here, but he's there for now. And I feel like that's a decent enough squad, to be quite honest. And that does it. Let me know what you think. I've spoke for so long. I'm just going to wrap it up. Like and subscribe. See you next time.